or we're taught to believe that filthiness and wickedness is something that comes from the worldly context of that, but it doesn't exclusively. It also flows out of a religious form of filthiness and wickedness. I know that sounds terrible and it just doesn't sound right, does it? But it's true. When we start thinking that the finished work of the Lord Jesus Christ isn't enough for whatever reason and for whatever application, and that our faith in that isn't sufficient, that we do have to do things or not do things to make God happy or stop him from being sad, well, some silly fellow was throwing a shopping trolley into the water. The council will have to get that out. Then it does inevitably form at some level or another filthiness and wickedness, but it's coming from a religious dimension, not it's provoked, it's empowered from the religious dimension, and not just solely the natural human inherent form of filthiness and wickedness. I keep having to remind you that religious evil is real, and that we have to get our head around it so that we can combat it within our own lives and help others, if we're invited or where possible, to understand theological abuse and religious evil as well. And the book of James is helping us to do that. Many of us have suffered at the hands of theological abuse, and we've felt terrible feelings towards these people that have done it. So James goes on to say, be doers, what's he say there? Sorry, I missed a bit. Wickedness with meekness, the implanted word which is able to save your souls. Now, the implanted word is the good news of the gospel of the finished work of the Lord Jesus Christ. The good news of the gospel of the finished work of the Lord Jesus Christ. That's what saves us. And James is saying, hang on to that. Hang on to the message. Don't let anything contaminate the fact that you know all your issues between yourself and God have been resolved for time and eternity through the finished work of the Lord Jesus Christ. He says, be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. Being a doer of the word, and he gets into it now, saying being a doer of the word, if you're a Jehovah Witness, immediately you think of getting out and knocking on doors, or standing at the carts, or whatever the case may be for your religion. But this application has nothing specifically to do with that, and we're going to find that out. James is leading into what he describes as the royal law of liberty. Now, what do you think the royal law of liberty is? It's to love your neighbor as yourself. The royal law of liberty is to love your neighbor as yourself. And we're about to find that out, aren't we? James is going to go into this, and he says, be hearers of the word, doers and not just hearers only, deceiving yourselves. I remember when I was a minister, I had a lot of trouble with some of the women Christians inside the congregation. I'm not picking women out, I'm just giving this as an example. And actually some men too, one in particular, won't go into that, but what they would do is say, God told me this and God told me that, and if they were wrong, they had no idea they were wrong, a lot of them. Just fanaticism. You couldn't get through to them because they deceived themselves. And with that deception came an over-devotion to God and an under-respect to man. I want to say that again. There was an over-devotion to God and an under-respect towards their fellow man, because God was telling them this and God was telling them that, whether it was positive or not, just suited their belief at that time. And these were the most difficult people I have ever had to deal with. In fact, it was impossible to deal with these people. Absolutely impossible. And they were completely deceived. Their idealisms and ways in which they thought they were to follow Christ had become so fanatical that they were impossible to deal with and terribly deceived. Now, they weren't deceived in the sense that they were going to lose their salvation, but they were terribly deceived in the sense that they were terribly deceived in the sense that their fanaticism was right when it was wrong. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man observing his natural face in a mirror. For he observes himself and goes away immediately, forgets what kind of man he was. But he who looks into the perfect law of liberty, here we go. Here we go, viewers. The problem's not, this is good, because this is now showing us the problem's not a problem of commission. It's not a problem of we're out doing the work. You can be out doing the work and be completely and utterly deceived within your person. That's for you, Hazy of JW Suicides, that beautiful tree. And I've seen this all too many times. People out doing the work, but they're completely and utterly deceived. And they're completely and utterly deceived in the sense that he who looks into the perfect law of liberty and continues in it, and is not a forgetful hearer but a doer of the work, this one is blessed in what he does. What is the perfect law of liberty? This isn't about standing at the carts. This isn't about me preaching on this adventure video. This isn't about, you know, this, that and all the other. This is about, ladies and gentlemen, wonderful viewers and subscribers, thank you for following me. This is about loving humanity in its right context. Let me give you an example. Yesterday I was at the local hospital seeing the physio for a follow-up on these injuries that I have, specifically these shattered talus bone repair, which has been 7 months now, with another 11 months to, is it 11? 11, yeah, about 11 months to go. I've got another beautiful tree, Hazy, just growing wild here on the bank of this estuary. And when I parked my push bike, because the hospital's just up the street, I parked my push bike, this is as true as I'm paddling today, and there was a gentleman in a wheelchair. He had one arm and one leg. I saw his other foot and it looked like what I could only describe as a claw. It was shriveled. And he was in this condition because he smoked. And in all honesty, it was all too late for this guy. He was just biding his time and waiting to die. And still, I would Didn't seem smoking, but it seemed to me like he was one of these that would continue to do it despite the terrible way in which it's destroyed his life. He was just going to continue to do it. Now, I felt repulsed. I'll be honest with you, I felt repulsed and couldn't get my head around how somebody could allow a habit to cause to be in that habit to the point where they're losing limbs and all other sorts of organ problems and stuff. This guy was on death's door, but he was outside, I believe, having a smoke. I don't think he was out there getting fresh air, unfortunately for him. The other part of me was to reach out and ask this man if he'd like prayer. Then the other part of me said, he's probably had all that and you're only going to be intrusive. And I've got this battle going on inside me. And he was looking at his phone and he said, look at this, look at this. I think he was grateful just to have somebody stop by. I was putting the bike in one of those bike holders. And then I said to him, what's that? And it was on YouTube, and it was one of those things where they're getting grubs out from underneath a person's skin. There's these grubs that get under your skin in some country and they've got to get them out. I forget where or how, but it was horrible. And this guy's into it, and I'm thinking, mate, isn't there something else you could be watching at this point in your life? You're on death's door. I just didn't feel right to say anything about